What's up, leaders? Hey, you want to know one of the things that sets leaders apart from other people? I think it's a desire to grow. I mean, come on, as leaders, that's our goal, isn't it? We want to grow. We want to grow in every single area of our life. In fact, it's one of our goals. And as leaders, not only do we want to grow, but we want the individuals on our team to grow and to get better. We want the number of people on our team to increase, like the actual amount of people that's in the room. As leaders, we want our influence to grow. We want to be able to expand our reach into the community. As churches and leaders in churches, we want to see people grow in a relationship with Jesus. We want to see people grow in the mission of Jesus to go and make disciples of all nations. Growth is just a part of who we are. In fact, at Revo, 2 out of our 5 core values are centered and anchored on growth. It's grow deep and move forward. Move forward. Don't be the same person tomorrow that you are today, and grow deep. Let your relationship with God and with others and your knowledge grow deeper like a root system. So how do you do that, right? If everybody wants growth and growth is such a good thing, how do you do that? What is the secret sauce of growth for you personally in your life? For leaders, for your team, for the group that you're leading, for the organization that you're over. Like, what do leaders need to know in order to experience real growth in life? What do we need to be chasing? See, I believe that God is calling you to something more. It's more than what you currently have, more than what you're currently doing. And if you're ever going to experience that, you and I are going to have to learn how to grow. So I want to give you today some leadership lessons from the greatest, I believe, the greatest leader in all of the Old Testament, a man by the name of Moses. So take your notebook out, open up your Bible. We're going to do Exodus and look at this story of Moses. Exodus chapter 18, starting in verse 13. Here are 4 things that leaders need to do to take their group, their team, their organization, even their personal growth to the next level. Out of Exodus, write these down, take your notebook out. 4 things we're going to learn from Moses. Let me set the table for the story here in Exodus chapter 18. Moses is leading God's people into the promised land. He is the man that God has anointed. And all of a sudden, one day, out of the blue, Moses' in-laws come into town. Moses' wife's parents roll in to see him. In-laws in town, that could be either a really good thing or it could be a really bad thing. You know what I'm saying? Let's figure out what the story says. Verse 13, the next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning until evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he says, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone as judge while all these people stand around you from morning until evening?" And Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it's brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone." First thing that I want you to jot down as we think about what great leaders have to understand is this. You have to admit that it's bigger than you. Number 1, write it down, big letters at the top of the page. You have to admit, if you want to grow, if your team's going to grow, if you're going to lead well as an individual, there has to be a point in your life in leadership where you understand that what you are doing is bigger than just you. This whole thing called leadership is bigger than me. You need to have that moment. This thing called Revo is bigger than just me. It's bigger than just the lead pastor. It's bigger than just the sermon that I preach on Sunday. If you're drowning in an area, this is something that leaders face. If you're feeling burnout, if you're feeling isolated in your life, if you're frustrated at a lack of progress, it's probably because, listen to what his father-in-law said. He said, if you keep doing what you're doing now, you are going to get burned out. You're going to make the people frustrated, and you are going to get frustrated. If that's you, if you can relate to that, and we all have had times in our life where we can relate to that. If that's you, it might be because you haven't come to grips with this reality. You haven't yet been willing to admit that this thing that God has called you to, leading this team, this group, this small group of friends, this job that you have, this ministry that you lead, you haven't quite stepped back and said, you know what? I'm realizing it now. This thing is bigger than me. A lot of people aren't willing to do that and admit that. And we have what I like to see is two different types of leaders in this situation. You have leaders that have a Lone Ranger mentality, which is what Moses kind of had right here, that he was calling him out on. And then his father-in-law came in and said, but you need to step back and actually be a good leader. Not a Lone Ranger, but a good leader. Let me tell you the difference between the two. Lone Ranger, this stings right here because there are times where I even realize like I'm trying to Lone Ranger it, instead of being a great leader that understands that the organization and what I'm doing is so much bigger than me. Lone Rangers don't think that anyone else can do the job except them. Lone Rangers think that no one can do the job as good as them. And you know the old saying, it's if you want something done right, then you might as well do it yourself. That's a Lone Ranger statement. Sometimes we'll struggle giving things away or sharing responsibilities or admitting that we need some help because there's no one around us that can do it as good as we can. That's a Lone Ranger mentality. I heard Craig Groeschel, he's a pastor out in Oklahoma. He said this one time that really shocked me when I first heard it. I said, no, that can't be true. But I'm realizing like the more and more that I journey in leadership, the more and more I realize this is absolute gold right here. He says, as a leader, if you can find someone that can do your job 60% as good as you can, then it's time to identify that person and train them and move forward in equipping them to do what you do. Like just a little over half as good at your job as you are, that's the person to begin to tap. That's the one to identify. Lone Rangers think that if a person can't do it as good as me, then I should probably just keep doing it. Leaders, though, are looking for people that have the potential, that have the gifting to do what they do. Yeah, they may not be ready yet, but leaders are willing to help them, equip them, come alongside them, encourage them, and push them to become the man or the woman that God has called them to be. Are you willing to develop others that may not be ready yet? It may be the big difference between you being a Lone Ranger and a great leader. Secondly, Lone Rangers, they want all the credit. You ever met a Lone Ranger like that? Whatever happens in the organization, they want to take the credit for it. President Harry Truman, great quote. He said this, you can accomplish anything in life, provided that you don't mind who gets the credit for it. If you have to have the credit and take the credit for everything that happens, if you have to have your hands on it, then you are severely limiting your ability to lead. You are already putting a cap on your ministry, on your small group, on your area of ministry. If it's all up to you and you have to be the one that does it, you will actually become the greatest barrier to the growth of you and your team and your ministry and your church. With Lone Rangers, they are always looking for ways to take the credit, but leaders are different. Here's what leaders do, and this is hard, but it's so important. Leaders are the first one to take responsibility when something goes wrong, and they're the first one to give credit away when something goes right. Hey, if something goes wrong, even if it's your fault, if I'm the leader, I'm taking responsibility for it. But if I do something great and it works out, I want to be the one to point at the various people on my team and say, you know, they were really the ones that made it happen. That's the difference between a leader and a Lone Ranger. The third one is this. It's all a language thing. You've probably heard some Lone Rangers say this. Lone Rangers love to say I and me instead of us and we. One of the things that our staff team does is I want to make sure I'm listening for people when they describe the ministry teams that they lead or a volunteer team that they lead or a group that they are over. It's our team. It's not my team. We did this. The reason why we are here. You see that language? It's not my team and I did this and the reason why I am successful is this. It's we. It's us. It's a team approach. I don't know if you've ever heard me introduce myself on a Sunday morning, but I always say the same thing. I say, I'm one of the pastors. I don't throw around lead pastor. I'm not the man. I'm not the lead. I don't use those titles to draw attention to myself. I'm one of the people that get to be on this incredible team. The team that works at Revo that is paid, the full-time people, that's not my staff. It's our staff. It's the church's staff. So it's not about me. I'm not trying to gain all the credit myself and pulling people into me. It's a team approach. That's what leaders do. Lone Rangers, it's my team. It's my job. It's my achievements. It's my accomplishments. It's my credit. Great leaders, we and us together get to share in the glory. Last thing I want you to do is answer these questions before we go into the next verses. Here's some questions that you can just take a minute, pause the video, and discuss amongst your team. Here's the questions. I heard Andy Stanley say this phrase one time. He said, only do what only you can do. What are the things in your life that only you can do? That was what Moses' father-in-law was asking Moses. He says, what you're doing, a lot of other people can do. So Moses, identify what only you can do and focus on that. So in your life, what are the things that only you can do? Focus on those. Write those things down. It ought to give you a good list of what you need to spend your time on and maybe some of the things that you need to drop off your list. Second question, what are the things in your sphere of leadership that you could train someone else to do? Give something away so that you can focus even more and develop a new leader. As a Christian, think about it in the terms of making new disciples. Like, what is your plan to teach someone and send them out as a new disciple maker? That's what Jesus has called us to do. That's what leaders in the church do. We make disciples. We take what we know and we pass it to someone else so that they can go out and pass it to someone else. We're making new disciples. The last question number 3, what area of your leadership do you struggle with in having a Lone Ranger mentality? Don't be scared to say all of them, because I've struggled with all of them before. Hit the pause button, take a second, answer those questions, write them in your journal or your notebook, or discuss it if you're meeting together with the team. Let's keep going. Verse 19. Listen now to me. This is Moses' father-in-law. You listen to me, okay? Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice. And may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they're to live and how they are to behave. Listen, if you want to grow as a leader and see your area of influence grow, then you have to be good at this. Number 2, write it down. You have to learn how to listen and learn. Great leaders listen and learn. You got to be able to open up your ears as a leader and be willing to listen. And this is hard sometimes. Listening takes humility. Specifically in this story, can you imagine how hard it would have been for Moses to listen to his father-in-law? I mean, this is Moses, God's man, leader of hundreds of thousands of people. Moses, Red Sea Moses, okay? Parted the Red Sea. Burning bush Moses, pretty big deal, okay? And all of a sudden, this nobody old man walks up out of nowhere and says, hey, little punk, little Moses, little son-in-law of mine, listen to me. You're doing it all wrong. Let me tell you what to do. And Moses wanted to get better. Here's the deal. Moses wanted to grow, and so he listened. If you want to grow, you will never learn. You will never grow if you don't listen. If you're not willing to humble yourself and realize that you don't know everything. Some of the hardest people to teach are the ones that think they already know it all. Those are the types of people that never see any growth. One of the hardest people to help in life is the people that don't think they need any help. Thank goodness Moses here realized he needed some help. But oftentimes leaders will say, or individuals will say, nah, man, I'm good. I don't need to improve. We're good right now. I'm just going to do what I keep doing. Just keep pedaling, just keep grinding, and, just see what happens. Nah, it's the wrong attitude. Be constantly listening and learning, constantly reaching out for help. The reality is this, healthy things grow. If you're not growing, if you're not moving forward, then you're not healthy, because healthy things grow. We need to grow spiritually. We need to grow emotionally. Some people are watching us right now. Some people need to grow physically. Some people need to grow mentally. One of the things that I do to grow is I have a goal every year. I read 100 books a year. I read that amount of books not because I'm just some avid reader, not just because I want to put a check mark in a box, but I want to keep growing. I want to keep learning. I want to keep leading. And those books can help me. I want to keep growing as a Christian. I want to keep growing as a spouse. I want to keep growing as a parent. I want to grow as a leader. I want to grow in my relationship with God. But in order to grow, you have to learn how to listen. You have to sit there and be willing to learn from everyone. The old adage, learn how to eat the fish and leave the bones. I can learn from anyone. Take out of it what I can and what I can learn and just, push the rest aside, push the bones away. But I can learn from anyone at any time. And that's what great leaders, I think, do. Here's some questions. Hit pause for a second. What is the method, your method of listening and learning? I mean, are you a podcast gal? Do you like books like I do? Maybe it's one-on-one discipleship relationships, but specifically identify ways in which you are listening and learning in the different areas of your life. Second question, what are the top 3 resources that you are listening and learning from right now? Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a podcast. Share them with someone else to help them journey as well. I have this thing on my Instagram. It's a story of books that I read all year. When people find out I read 100 books a year, that's the biggest question I get from them is like, oh, well, hey, what are your best ones? Which ones have you read? I'm looking at picking up a few books. I want to know some more. What are the ones? And so in order to help other people grow, I will take a picture of the copy of the book, the cover of the book, and post it on my Instagram in my stories section so that it'll encourage people. Oh, wow, that book looks good. I'll put a little star beside it or a little flame if it was fire, or if it really good, or skip this one, if it wasn't. It's my desire to help put resources in other people's hands, not to brag about books that I've read. I mean, who cares? What are you, a nerd? Who cares how many books you read? I want to listen and learn, and I want to help you do the same. So think about ways that you can share that. If you listen to a good podcast, share it. If you read a good book, share it. What are those 3 resources? And share them right now with whoever you're journeying the group with. Last question, can you identify an area of your life and leadership that has grown in the past 6 months? How do you know that it's grown? What do you attribute the growth to? If you can't identify an area that has grown, that may be a big red flag. So hit the pause button really quick. Talk about those questions with the people in your group or jot the notes down in your journal, and let's move forward and learn together. Here's a big one. You ready for this? Verse 21. But select capable men from all of the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Help them serve as judges for the people at all times. But have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. Here's what great leaders have to do in order to keep growing. Number 3, so important. Jot it down. Pick the right people. Leaders know how to surround themselves with the right people. They know how to pick the right people to partner with them in their organization and on their team. Moses' father-in-law says, hey, find people that can help you lead. Pick the right people. What do you mean right people? People that are capable, people that are spiritual, people that are trustworthy, above reproach. Here's the deal. Write this, put it on your wall, put this in your journal. This quote, man, has proven itself to me so many different times. The right people are your greatest asset. The wrong people are your greatest liability. You will not have a greater liability on your team than having the wrong person on your team. They'll have the wrong attitude. They'll give the wrong effort. They will spoil the chemistry of the whole team. If their character is not good, if their competency isn't right, it'll ruin the whole team. But if you get somebody on your team as a leader that meets the requirements of high character, great competency, great chemistry with your team leaders, oh man, that will be your greatest asset. Great leaders actually are only great because they have great people around him. Now, I heard many people say that I got people. They think when I say, have you surrounded yourself with people? They say, yeah, I got people. I got friends. I got people around me. Well, let me share with you something that's really hard as a leader, specifically as it obtains to growth. Sometimes, man, this stings. Sometimes the people that got you here aren't the people that can take you there. That stings, man. There's some people on your team that helped you to become the man or the woman that you are right now. But the reality is they have met their lid. They've reached it. They can't really offer you anything else and the team anything else if the team is going to grow. And one of the difficult things that you have to do as a team leader is realize when someone has reached their lid and tapped out on their potential. And you have to step in and be able to add new people to the team and find a different seat on the bus for that person. Moses' father-in-law said, be careful who you put on these teams. Pick people that are qualified. On your team, look for people that are humble. Look for people that are willing. I look for people that have like a quiet, calm confidence about them. Not someone that is overly arrogant about everything and constantly talking about themselves. I'm not looking for people that are too big to learn, too big to serve, too big to humble themselves. I'm looking for someone that has a strong inner self, like a solid soul, somebody with some grit and determination, no giving up, no backing down. Man, we're gonna will this thing into existence because God has called me to do it. Those are the people. I don't want to push a rope. I want to have to pull people back and say, whoa, here we go. Slow down a little bit. Like, calm down. I love your excitement, but let's get it under control. Those people are so much better than someone that you're constantly having to kick and push forward and won't do anything. And you're begging them and you're having to tell them what to do instead of them realizing what God has called them to do. Those types of people on your team will make your team so much better. So if you're going to share the load, then you have to build teams. If you're going to build teams, then you're going to have to learn how to develop leaders. Developing leaders means you have to learn how to pick the right people. Not everybody has the same capacity, though. I want you to notice the different numbers that Moses has to break them into. His father-in-law says, put some people in roles that would lead tens of people. Put some that would be over hundreds of people, some over thousands and tens of thousands. What Moses' father-in-law is saying is there are different people that have the capacity to lead different ministries in different areas. And here's the thing, here's the trouble. Don't put a leader of tens in a position that leads hundreds because you're setting both up to fail. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. You damage both the peg and the hole. Because you're going to hurt the hundreds that are being led because you didn't give them a good leader. And you're going to hurt the leader because you put them in an impossible situation that they weren't made for and didn't have the capacity for either. So don't put the wrong person in the wrong position. Here's some questions, though, to think about. First one, what are the top 3 characteristics you look for in people to assess their leadership potential? Like you're looking at somebody and you're like, they have what it takes. I'm pretty sure they have what it takes. What are those? What are the things that you're looking for in people? A desire that you see, a thing that they have that makes you look back and say, I want to have that person on my team. I want them on my staff. I want them on my team. I want them hanging out with me. I think they're a great leader. Here's the second question. The right people on your team are your greatest asset. The wrong people are your greatest liability. Do you have a personal example that can illustrate that? I know it's painful, but maybe you can identify someone where you're like, man, there was one person that I felt like was holding the whole team back or was a barrier to the whole organization, and that was the wrong person that became a great liability. Or maybe you can have somebody in your group or on your team that you're like, hey, when I brought that person on, man, they were so good. They were able to accomplish so much. Hit the pause button right quick and talk about those 2 things and how you're going to get better as a leader in picking the right people. Last verse, ready? Last verse, let's close it down. Verse 23. Moses' father-in-law says, if you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Number 4, big important thing. that leaders have to do if you're going to grow, if your organization and your team is going to grow. Number 4, you have to learn how to stand the strain. That's the language that the NIV version uses. Moses' father-in-law says, look, man, stand the strain. Churches won't grow, businesses won't grow, ministries won't grow many times because the leader can't stand the strain. They give up too soon. I've seen this happen so many times. Man, when something starts, people are excited about it. We're gung-ho. Let's do it. Like, God has called me to change the world. And then here's what happens. Stuff gets hard, and all of a sudden they're not fired up anymore. And they get discouraged, and they get burned out, and they quit. God has an amazing view at the top of the mountain, but most people in reality quit before they actually see it. Moses' family rallied around him, and his father-in-law said, you do this, you learn how to stand the strain, Moses, and people will go home satisfied. Man, that is a tall task for a leader, because sometimes our people's satisfaction, your team, your ministry, the people that go to your church, sometimes their satisfaction is based on your willingness to stand the strain. Moses' father-in-law said, they will never be satisfied unless you grow as a leader and learn how to stand the strain. Your ability to hold up in a time of monotony or pain paves the way for other people to encounter Jesus. Your ability to withstand the trials creates hope and healing for someone else. So how bad do you want to grow? Right? How desperate are you to getting better? How driven are you to take your life and your team and your area of leadership to a whole nother level? Start right here. Realize that it's bigger than you. Never stop listening and learning. Pick the right people and learn how to stand the strain. Last set of questions. As you look back in your life, can you identify a time where you gave up too quickly? I know that stings, man, but what did it cost you in the end? Man, what kind of blessing do you think you forfeited because you just weren't willing to stand the strain and you gave up too quickly? Second question, when things get hard in leadership, how do you stop from giving up? Because heads up, friends, if it's not already hard, it'll get hard. It is going to be hard different times in your ministry. You're going to feel like quitting. You're going to burn out. You're going to feel like throwing the towel in and giving up. How do you stop from giving up? How do you stop from burning out? How do you stop from quitting when things get tough? Identify those things, and you are going to set yourself up for some great growth as a leader.